Everybody, Jason Davis here. Davis up front on Compass Football World Cup quarterfinal stage. We now have 8 teams left at the World Cup in Russia. A fascinating group of 8 teams, and we've got some round of 16 matchups, some controversy to talk about on today's program. And I'll let you know now that Yahoo Sports' Henry Bushnell will be by to talk about this quarterfinal round. Fantastic writer. He'll be by to break this all down for us as we look at the last 8 at the World Cup in 2018. Again, a couple of surprises, some big boys knocked out of the tournament. Now we've got a motley crew, so if you will, of 8 teams left, and it's possible that it's coming home. Can England do it? Do they have a path? We'll talk to Henry about that a little bit later. Let's take a look at the knockout round matchups as they've happened so far. Certainly the round of 16 results, and then those teams moving on into the quarterfinals. Again, the surprises here are Spain being knocked out of the tournament. Not necessarily a surprise, but Mexico falling at the round of 16 hurdle once again and losing out to Brazil. Let's zoom in here and look at each side of this bracket. We'll first focus on the left side there, because this is the side that is tilted to the World Cup winners. You've got Brazil a winner and France a winner, Uruguay a winner in their deep history, Belgium, the golden generation. So Uruguay and France, a fascinating matchup that now we know will not have Edinson Cavani in it for Uruguay. A big blow to them. Because of injury, Cavani will miss out. That's an advantage for France. We know about their talent with Mbappe and Pogba and Giroud and Griezmann and Matuidi and so many. Name them. There are so N'Golo Kante certainly bears mention. And then on the other side, Brazil and Belgium could be the most entertaining match of the quarterfinal round. We also have on the other side of this bracket. Look, this is interesting because it's an open path to a final for England. If you look at those 4 teams, Russia, Croatia, Sweden, and England, you might put England top of the list. They do have to get past a tough Swedish team. There's nothing easy about beating Sweden. Ask the Italians, ask the Swiss from the round of 16, ask the Brazilians who had a rough go of it. Russia and Croatia and the hosts trying to spring another upset. Can they beat out Croatia, who maybe is a bit too goal shy at this point for us to really believe in them in this tournament? It's certainly a very interesting World Cup with a bunch of very fascinating matchups in this quarterfinal round. Again, Henry Bushnell from Yahoo Sports will be by to talk about it. Before we get to that, let's just touch on some of the controversy coming out of that round of 16 match. Penalty shootout win for England over Colombia. The Colombians, they got beef. They got some serious beef over what they thought was biased refereeing by American Mark Geiger. And look, when you have a stage as big as the World Cup, when you have intensity at this level, when you have a team like Colombia who was committed to fouling and playing physical against the English, it's going to be difficult. Here's what Colombian captain Radamel Falcao had to say after the match. I found it peculiar that they put an American referee in this instance. To tell you the truth, the process leaves a lot of doubts. He only spoke English. Some bias was certain. Those small calls, he was pushing us toward our goal. That was clear for me. Again, some beef on the part of the Colombians and the players. Diego Maradona has interjected into this situation as well with his own comments about Mark Geiger and the refereeing, pointing to the Americanness of Mark Geiger. As much as refereeing is criticized in the modern game, and certainly Mark Geiger is not above reproach for his refereeing. Ask MLS refs. He's been to World Cups before. There is no indication that he's done anything wrong or that bias was part of the mix. If you watch that game back, you'll see, of course, Colombia fouling repeatedly. And Geiger, though you could argue he lost control of the match, did what he needed to do with the yellow cards when necessary in order to try to regain control. What else is he supposed to do? He sends players off. We'll certainly be saying after the fact that he lost control of the match and ruined the match by putting England up a man on Colombia. The penalty, questionable call. Still think it's a pretty clear penalty. Sanchez on Harry Kane. And then the big moment Well, in retrospect, it turned out to be a big moment. At the time, we weren't so sure. Colombia off a throw-in, ball off of Maguire's back for England. He wasn't paying attention. There's two balls sort of in play or in the area, and Geiger blows the whistle because it looks like the fourth official, or sorry, the assistant referee on the sideline wasn't ready for play to resume. To me, that's not an issue here. We'll talk to Henry Bushnell from Yahoo Sports as to whether or not he agrees. Now, how big is this beef for Colombia? Well, how about this big? Colombia and Colombian fans have started a petition. This is over at change.org. This is from Juan Diego Garcia Muñez, and he wants the game replayed. He wants them to play this over in order to be fair about it. The biased refereeing, according to Juan Diego Garcia Muñoz, demands this. How many people have signed this petition? Look at that. As of this moment, 234,900 people have signed this petition. This is the original Spanish, so I'm not going to try to read it to you here. But he points to those moments, the penalty in favor of England, the legitimate goal, he calls it, of Carlos Bacca on that throw-in that I mentioned. Those two moments apparently big enough for our friend Juan that he believes that the game should be replayed. Man, it's going a little too far, don't you think? I mean, salty is salty in the case of the Colombians. The World Cup brings up all of those sorts of passions. All right, we'll find out if it's coming home. We'll find out if Henry thinks there was anything wrong with Mark Geiger's refereeing in that match, and we'll talk about the quarterfinal matchups. Who's got the upper hand? Henry Bushnell from Yahoo Sports when we come back. Back on Davis Up Front on Compass Football, and happy to be joined now by Henry Bushnell from Yahoo Sports to talk about the World Cup quarterfinal stage. It is now upon us. The final 8 is set. And Henry, it's been a less than predictable World Cup. I certainly say that.
Yeah, I think it's almost been, in a way, it's been everything we would want from a World Cup. It's had the upsets, but it's also, offered up a couple really glamorous, quarterfinal ties here. And it's had the drama, it's had the late goals, it's had the controversy. It's had everything, and 2 off days here. I'm ready to get going again.
Yeah, you mentioned the controversy. Before we look at the quarterfinal matchups, and there are some interesting ones. Certainly, the bracket seems to be heavily weighted on one side and less so on the other. Some of the controversy stems from the match between England and Colombia. Certainly, the Colombians not too happy with the refereeing of American Mark Geiger. Falcao coming out and saying something specifically about Geiger being American. Maradona's interjected himself, as he has so many times in this World Cup. What do you make of the criticisms of Geiger from that match?
It's interesting. I think that was the type of match that Geiger, he's in an unwinnable position almost. Yeah. Because first of all, the Colombians brought a lot of it on themselves, I think. You saw John Stones today saying they were the dirtiest team he's ever played against or something along those lines. They were really chippy. From the start, they lined up with basically 3 defensive midfielders. You knew what they were going to do, and they went through with it. So Geiger's, he has a decision. Does he, if he keeps issuing yellow cards, which is, the way that people talk about controlling the game, the way to control the game is issue more yellow cards. Well, then he's probably sending a Colombian player off at one point, and they're even more angry, and there's even more controversy. So that was the type of game that I really think it was less about Geiger and more just about the way the 2 teams played.
Yeah, certainly both teams made it difficult on Geiger. There was at least one controversial moment, and I'm going to spend a little time on this program. When a throw-in was taken by England, the ball bounces off of Maguire. Colombia ends up putting the ball in the back of the net. I know that's drilling down very specifically, but I wonder if you have a take on that particular moment, because some of the upset is over Geiger blowing the whistle in that moment instead of allowing play to continue, because it seemed as though the Colombians got an advantage.
Yeah, I really don't have a problem with how he handled that. Again, I think it's the type of thing that we look back on now, given how the game ended and given that Colombians have various reasons to be angry with various incidents. They sort of single out that one or various other moments. But I didn't have a problem with how he handled it at all.
So obviously, the penalty, a point of controversy. Regardless, England is now through to the quarterfinals, and so I will ask you a question here, Henry. Is it coming home?
It is. It is. No, in all seriousness, I mean, they're the favorites to get to the final, right? They have to be, based on the way they're playing. They obviously have more set pieces in their back pocket, and that's been one of the themes of this World Cup, and especially for them. I really like the way they're set up. They wowed us on the attacking end of the field in the group stage against lesser teams, but really the reason we thought England was good coming into this was against the stronger teams. I think they went, I believe they went 627 straight minutes without conceding a goal in friendlies and qualifiers leading up to their friendlies at the end of May, until they conceded against Nigeria, I think. So they have a really, strong setup in this system, even with playing, two attack-minded midfielders in front of Jordan Henderson. So I really like their structure. I really like what Southgate has done. I really like the system. And I think they're certainly the favorite to get to the final from the right side of the bracket.
You look at their matchup in the quarterfinals, they'll certainly be favorites against Sweden, and you would expect that, if Sweden's going to win, it's going to have to be similar to the way they beat Switzerland, a 1-0 kind of scoreline. Briefly, before we move on to the other quarterfinal matches, what do you expect Sweden to do? Is there anything different about their approach against England than what we've seen from them the rest of the tournament?
Not necessarily. I think Sweden has surprised me more than anybody. I was really down on them coming into the tournament, but I think they're completely legit, and I think they could absolutely give England a good run and maybe even beat England. They certainly don't have the talent that would make them, a free-flowing counterattacking side, but they have the synchronization, and those front two really know how to play off each other, and I think they will be able to against an England front line that they can, like John Stones can be beaten in the air, for example, and they really know how to get on the counter. So I think they're going to cause England some problems. I would still pick England to win, but I think it's going to be tougher than a lot of people expect.
Also on that side of the bracket, and we're doing this backwards in terms of chronology with the games, but on that side of the bracket, Croatia and Russia, the hosts, a surprise quarterfinalist, certainly getting past Spain in the round of 16. The Croatians are the obvious favorites. Is there a reason to think the Russians can spring another big upset?
I think there is, just because I'm not sure I trust Croatia yet at when they have to be the team that takes the initiative, when they play as the superior team. Really the reason that we're all believing in Croatia is that Argentina game, but that was an Argentina team that played as a superior team, but wasn't actually a superior team. They were a complete mess, and that was the game where they sort of went away with the system that they had come in playing, and they were just all over the place. Croatia, really, I haven't been as impressed with them as I think a lot of other people have. And I worry about how they're going to break down this low Russian block, with probably similar to what they did against Spain, with four midfielders in front of a back five. You can call it a back three or back five. So I think that this could be a tight game, sort of like Croatia-Denmark was in the round of 16.
Imagine that Russia will be happy with Croatia taking shots from outside the box,
Right.
and maybe Croatia can get something from Modric, which we've already seen in this tournament. On the other side of the bracket, obviously Uruguay and France matching up. This is an Uruguayan team that has built into the tournament. You have to give them credit for that. And a France team sort of doing the same and certainly looking like the France we would expect to see when they took down Argentina. So how do you handicap this one?
I think the big thing is Edinson Cavani's health. It sounds like he definitely won't start and may or may not be available off the bench. And I think that's a massive blow to Uruguay, just because, if Cavani were healthy, their threat in this game would be, that two-man attack, basically. And, bunkering in, shutting down France, which we've seen other teams do, just by playing a defensive, rigid system, and then counting on those front two to get the better of France's defenders. Now, if it's a front one, or if it's Suarez with Christian Stuani or somebody else, it's really just not the same Uruguay team. So that's why I'd make France a significant favorite, and they'll certainly have a lot more trouble scoring goals than they did against Argentina. Again, that Argentina team was just all over the place. This Uruguay team, no matter what happens up front, they will be rigid. They will sit with four defenders and then three or four midfielders in front of them. They're going to make it difficult on France, but France is certainly the more talented team. I would favor them.
Now, I think I left the best the best match for last, at least in terms of entertainment value, possibly, and that's Brazil against Belgium. We've talked a lot about Belgium's attacking prowess. We know Brazil can score goals. Neymar stepped up in that game against Mexico. How do you look at this one? Seems to be the closest one, the most difficult one to pick a winner.
Yeah, I actually think Brazil's a significant favorite here because I really worry about, the thing with Belgium is we have not seen this Belgium team play against a team in a competitive match who's better than it. And when they played Japan, they're better than Japan, but Japan was really the first real team in a game that mattered that they played at this tournament. I think Japan exposed some things in that midfield. So if Roberto Martinez rolls out this system with basically 2 wingers and 2 other forwards behind Romelu Lukaku, and then Kevin De Bruyne as basically a defensive midfielder / traditional central midfielder, I really worry about how Brazil is just going to carve them open on the counterattack. So I think Brazil is just a much more coherent unit than Belgium, and that's why I think they're the significant favorites here.
Let me ask you before I let you go, Henry, what you make of the Neymar controversy, the discussion around Neymar certainly taking some criticism for the simulation, the acting, the exaggerated responses to fouls. But on the other hand of that argument is, of course, that Neymar is the most fouled player in the tournament, and he seems to be a target for every single team that he plays.
Right. I think the fact that he's almost turned into a meme has sort of exaggerated the criticism of him. I don't want to say that diving is good, but there's a method to the madness in that he has to embellish the contact, because otherwise teams are just going to keep fouling him like Switzerland did in that opener, and the ref he'll call the fouls, but he's not going to give yellow cards. And if he's not going to give yellow cards because the contact doesn't seem as egregious, then the fouls are just going to continue. So it's part of soccer. It's part of Neymar's game specifically, and I don't have a problem with it as much as a lot of other people do.
Henry Bushnell from Yahoo Sports joining us to talk about the quarterfinal phase of the World Cup. Thank you so much for the time, Henry.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you to Henry Bushnell from Yahoo Sports, and thank you for watching Compass Football. Make sure you subscribe and like on all your social channels. We'll be back to set you up for the semifinals on Davis Up Front. See you then.